give, as you've heard, recording is in progress. And while you're entering and putting yourself at ease, grab a coffee, take a tea. I will give the floor to Ferechte Jalayer, the chair of the AER Working Group on Culture.
Thank you, Johanna. Hi, dear all. It's an honor and privilege for me to welcome you on behalf of AER. I am very happy to see so many participants representing such a vast spectrum of regions and other important collaborators. I'm Ferechte Hess, and I'm a country councillor in the Swedish region Värmland, where I hold a seat in the regional board for culture and education. I'm also chair for a AER working group on culture. Both these missions are very important to me because they derive from a commitment driven by my conviction that our cultural heritage is the key to many of our society challenges, social cohesion, sustainable development, to mention a few. Archives, libraries, museums, and other cultural actors are depending on innovation solutions to be able to preserve, utilize, and develop the cultural heritage. Unfortunately, the range of the services and products is yet limited. Cross-sectoral initiatives as CUBES are essential to fully widen its potential. Together, we can create a stimulating environment where the cultural heritage can be developed and given even bigger importance by identifying the cultural heritage sector's needs and working closely together with innovators, and entrepreneurs. By building stronger links between stakeholders, we can create tools for those who either emphasize the work in the cultural sectors or provide services that allows to the public to experience the cultural heritage. Year 2018 marked the first year dedicated to cultural heritage. The aim of the year was to encourage Europeans to discover and engage with cultural heritage and to reinforce a sense of belonging to our region. Since that, through the pandemic, we have experienced an unprecedented crisis which has caused severe economic and social damage. It has, of course, also damaged our sense of belonging and affected Europeans' social cohesion. But it has also highlighted our need to this sense of belonging, our desire for cultural experiences, and the need to develop the role of cultural heritage in a society that is on constant change. For this, I believe CUBES to be an important initiative that will serve those needs excellently. As a representative for my home region, Värmland in Sweden, I know the distribution that cultural heritage can provide us with on many fields, such as rural and regional development, urban planning, and tourism. For instance, last Saturday, we celebrated our regional cultural heritage day. Heritage Day here in Värmland, and the diversity of activities, places, and participants really emphasized the important role of cultural heritage. Today, we will learn more about cultural heritage in EU policy, but also about synergies in working with tourists, digital policies, education, and research. We will also learn from different stakeholders directly involved in their regions or representing regions on European level. I really look forward to take part of this interesting mix, and I hope you will all enjoy and learn from it. Thank you. Now, I'm going to give the floor to the first speaker, Nintina Petrovia, member of the Gabriel's Cabinet, European Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and Youth. Here you are, please.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of cultural heritage, thank you for this invitation to Commissioner Maria Gabriel. She is not in a position to join you today due to prior commitments, but she asked me to convey to you her message. As you know, for the first time, the portfolio of Commissioner Gabriel brings together culture, education, research, and innovation, which is an important move this mandate, and it really focuses on synergies that can be developed between these policy areas. Cultural heritage builds people's identity, binds communities together, and acts as a source of growth and jobs. Investing in cultural heritage, traditional knowledge and skills can develop sustainable creative economies, open up opportunities to youth, and help strengthen social cohesion. It is in this context that innovation plays a key role for cultural heritage and for our regions. Digital innovation, for instance, has and will continue to play an important role in cultural heritage preservation. We recognize this in the European Framework for Action in Cultural Heritage. It was one of its pillars, building on the work of the European Year of Cultural Heritage in 2018. And we saw the importance of these technological innovations as we could no longer visit cultural sites during the pandemic last year. Digital access became essential for culture to continue to function and bringing us together at such a difficult time. Europeana, for instance, became a fundamental resource at our disposal, containing digitized cultural heritage collections of more than 3,000 institutions across Europe. During the pandemic, the platform immediately started to work on building capacity in the sector. It organized almost 2,000 workshops for individuals and cultural institutions. And they launched the Discovering Europe initiative, which put the spotlight on cultural heritage all around Europe and contributed to the support of local tourism. But the biggest challenge in front of us during last year was not just a technological one. It was above all how to engage the society. Which brings me to my second point. Not all innovation is technological. Social innovation is something that this sector is exploring and that it must continue to explore. EU-funded projects have given us much evidence of what this kind of innovation can do in local communities. CUBES is a great example, of course, not just working on digitalization, but creating bridges between local communities through skills in sustainable development and cultural administration. Your project is a force for a fairer cultural landscape, one that reaches more people. The Charter project is another great example, funded under Erasmus+. Again, here we see innovation developing heritage skills. Both projects have been supported by our Erasmus program, another clear sign of the potential of synergies between Commissioner Gabriel's policy areas. We also want to support social innovation to promote sustainable cultural tourism. We had a dedicated expert group to analyze how best we could support our regions, linking cultural heritage and tourism. You can find the recommendations of the group on our website, together with examples of best practices. And all this brings me to my last point: innovation requires funding. First of all, we have Creative Europe program with a budget of 2.4 billion euro. For the first time ever, the program includes a new approach addressing the specific needs of cultural heritage. It is precisely to support innovation that for the first time we created also a cluster in Horizon Europe program dedicated to culture, creativity and inclusive society with a budget of nearly 2.3 billion euro. These funds should help link heritage with our cultural and creative sectors and industries. Innovative platforms will facilitate understanding and enrich cultural experience through creation of a cultural heritage cloud. At the same time, synergies can be best exploited if we look holistically at how we can boost innovation. That is why we are also creating a new knowledge and innovation community in the field of cultural and creative sectors and industries. It will be developed within the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. The first call should come out already this October. We wanted to build a strong ecosystem where different sectors can learn from each other, building their networks and working together. And of course, with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology's experience in connecting to local and regional players, this will have a big impact in Europe's regions and their ability to innovate and work together. To conclude, our commitment to cultural heritage, to our regions, and to building synergies that strengthen both is clear. We want to do this by fostering innovation, both technological and social, and we want to do this from the bottom up. That means providing resources, funding, expertise, and helping all the stakeholders developing connections among each other. And together with our regions, through implementing the key actions of our joint action plan with the Committee of the Regions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Petrova, for stressing the bridges that must be built between communities and sustainable development through various ways, including fostering relevant skills and synergies, which is, of course, a hot topic that concerns all of us on a local and regional level. So I would like now to take over and introduce myself. I'm Dr. Maria Kouri, and I'm a tenured lecturer at the University of the Peloponnese in Greece at the Department of History, Archaeology, and Cultural Resources Management. My field of specialization is cultural policy and administration with a focus on local community sustainable development. Therefore, it is a real compliment and an honor to welcome to our event a panel of distinguished speakers who boast a long experience in policy making regarding cultural innovations, as well as the sustainable uses of heritage for developing rural, urban areas and regions. In this panel, I shall be inviting our panelists to offer us succinctly their insight on topics that they specialize in, and then I shall be posing one relevant question to each one of them so that we may have the opportunity to find out a bit more on the discussed topics. I would kindly ask members of our digital audience to take down the questions and share them with our speakers at the end of the panel, either verbally by raising a digital hand or by writing the question in the chat space. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our first distinct panelist, Mrs. Anne Grady. Mrs. Grady is a cultural heritage national expert in the Directorate General for Education and Culture. She joined the EU Commission in May 2016 as a seconded national expert in the Cultural Policy Unit of the Directorate General for Education and Culture. Before joining the Commission, she was a senior manager with the National Museum of Ireland and was responsible for a number of areas, including the development of a wide range of policies and guidelines. She was also a member of the Member States Expert Group on Digitization and Digital Preservation. In her earlier career, working with the ministry responsible for culture and heritage, She developed policy and legislation in respect of the national cultural institutions and was instrumental in establishing a heritage fund on a statutory basis. As Education and Marketing Officer for DUHAS, the Heritage Service, Mrs. Grady was a member of both the UK and USA Overseas Tourism Marketing Initiative working groups. Anne has qualifications in marketing, education, strategic management, and corporate governance. Quite an impressive CV, Mrs. Grady, and you are well known for your insight and long-term experience in cultural policy making. So I would like to invite you to present us succinctly the European Commission's initiatives and work on safeguarding and promoting Europe's cultural heritage.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, colleagues, and thank you to CUBES and AER for this timely and very, very valuable workshop this morning. I do have a presentation, a PowerPoint. If Anna, you could share it, please. This is where we get into the technical little hitches of the morning.
I'm sure we will overcome everything.
I think we will, yeah.
And just a moment, please.
It's okay. Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and thank you for the great introduction, Maria. So if I could move on to my very, very first slide, please. And this is just to outline. Sorry, the next slide.
Oh, this is
okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Just that the next slide will outline the European Commission's competence in relation to cultural heritage. What the Commission does is it assists and complements the actions of the member states, and that's in accordance with the Treaty for the European Union. Develop relevant policies and programs, which you heard this morning being outlined, and supports and promotes policy collaboration between the member states and the stakeholders on cultural heritage. And I've provided many links in this presentation, so you can look for further information. And this link here is to our website on the all-important funding opportunities. Next slide, please. We've heard mentioned this morning in two excellent speeches about the European Year of Cultural Heritage in 2018. And this was a year dedicated entirely to cherishing cultural heritage. And it was a very, very successful year. There was over 12.8 million participants, and that's throughout Europe and even further. So if I could have the next slide. But 2018 is just one year, and it came and it went. So we had to have a legacy for the year. And as mentioned already, we have the European Framework for Action. And there's 4 key principles in this document. It's been cultural heritage to be holistic, mainstreaming, integrated, evidence-based policy making, and multi-stakeholder. So my next slide, please. So there's over 65 actions in that framework document. And one of the key actions is the setting up of the European Commission Expert Group on Cultural Heritage. And this followed a call that was conducted. And we have, as part of this Member States Expert Group, with European organisations which are active in the field of culture and heritage. We have experts from the Member States and other relevant organisations. So there's more information provided at the link there. But what does the group do? Well, we continually exchange information and best practice. We monitor the progress of the framework document, and we make recommendations and opinions. And of course, the other Commission services participate. And this is all about mainstreaming and integration. So other Commission DGs come along to the meetings and present on various initiatives. Our next meeting is in mid-October, and that'll be our 5th meeting. So could I have the next slide, please? Another legacy of the European Year of Cultural Heritage is the European Heritage in Action. And this is also documented in the framework document. And it's a peer learning program for local and regional authorities and stakeholders. The focus is on 3 different areas. So we have participatory governance of cultural heritage, the adaptive reuse, how to adapt cultural heritage, and the quality principles for interventions on cultural heritage. There were 12 peer learning visits, and that comes to an end at the end of this month. And I've provided a link there to the catalogue of the case studies, which I suggest that you have a look at. And there's a lot of information, a lot of ideas. Following this, the next tranche will look at recovery after the pandemic, sustainable development, governance and financing. And of course, there'll be offline and online peer learning will continue into 2022. So my next slide, please. Also during the year, and again covered this morning, was an open method of coordination working group looking at sustainable cultural tourism. And the report was published in 2019. And I led this particular group of experts. And what we found out during our deliberations and our meetings was there was no definition of sustainable cultural tourism. So the group drafted the first ever definition, and you'll see there that it's about integrated management. It's about local communities, creating social, environmental and economic benefits for all, including all stakeholders. And again, it's very much a bottom-up approach. And it's mainly to achieve the protection, the safeguarding of tangible and intangible heritage, and to allow access at the same time. So my next slide. So the full report, the link is there, and there was 27 case studies from the member states and over 55 recommendations. And some of those recommendations are very much on an individual and on a regional level as well. There's emphasis on investment, particularly training, digital, an emphasis on communities, involving communities, having a participatory approach to the governance of cultural heritage, promoting ownership of cultural heritage at a local level. And we saw this very much last year during the pandemic. And consultation with the local communities to develop and agree high quality tourism, but based on authentic offers and experiences, products with cultural heritage. So it also includes the cultural and creative industries. Could I have my next slide, please? So last year and this year, we had the unprecedented impact of the pandemic, COVID-19. And we know that tourism fell immensely during the year. I mean, there was a drop-off of 74% last year, and the forecast for this year, while not as bad, will probably not match 2019. We also know that 30 million people are directly employed in the EU in industries and sectors relating to tourism, and about 300,000 of them work on cultural heritage. So during the pandemic, even, and I mention this coming from a museum background, a lot of museums lost income from the sales of admission tickets, shops, corporate hospitality, some as much as €20,000 a week. But the plus side, and there has to be a plus side of the pandemic, there was an increase in digitalization. So there's more online exhibitions, resources, education, and there was a lot more online content. So my next slide. The Recovery and Resilience Facility, and again, it was touched on this morning, €750 billion. But what's in that for culture? Well, the Commission cannot impose, it cannot make earmarking support for cultural heritage within member states. But the Parliament and many of the stakeholders have recommended to the member states that they dedicate at least 2% of their recovery package for the cultural and creative sectors. My next slide, please. So also what happened on cultural heritage and tourism? Well, the Commission's communication last May was issued. Again, the link is there. There was a new platform, Reopen EU, which has had over 6 million users. The JRC had a cultural gems, and this is all about local and what's in your area, a dedicated campaign. And recently this year, the Commission's communication on the EU guidelines for the safe resumption of activities in the cultural and creative sectors. And even more recently, DG Grow, they've issued a new funding guide for the tourism sector. So my next slide, please. And on the cultural and creative sectors, there are two platforms set up, one for the member states and one for Creatives Unite. And the Creatives Unite has been hugely successful. There's over 38,000 users and there's 915 published posts. And I suggest if anybody's got an interest in that, to have a look at that site and also to upload any relevant articles. So my next slide. The European Green Deal, which resets the Commission's commitment to tackling climate change. And the main output of the Green Deal is no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, a very, very ambitious target. So in fact, that will bring me on to my next slide. The new European Bauhaus, and this translates the European Green Deal into tangible change on the ground that improves our quality of life, our buildings, the public spaces, fashion, furniture, and it's all about sustainability and good practices. Again, I've included links there for you to have a look at for further information. So my next slide. And cultural heritage for resilient Europe. And again, this is going to fall out from the framework document of the European Year of Cultural Heritage, looking at safeguarding endangered heritage. 3 OMC groups, which I'd like to mention very briefly. One on sustainability, one on climate change, which I'm leading, and one on high quality architecture. And the report of that will be published shortly. Next slide, please. The one on climate change is about strengthening cultural heritage resilience for climate change. And there's a huge interest in this particular group. There's 25 member states taking part, plus Norway, Iceland and Switzerland. And the mandate is really linked very much to the SDGs, but one in particular, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And what we're doing is we're looking at best practice, we're exchanging ideas, and we hope to have our recommendations published in 2022 and the report published by the end of next year. So my next slide, please. Creative Europe programme, again covered this morning, 2.4 billion to help Europe's cultural and creative sectors. And as outlined, what's new? It's a stronger emphasis on the transnational creation, cooperation and promotion of Europe's culture. So my next slide. So we have this year, I thought it's worth mentioning, the European Year of Rail, because this has an impact too on the regions and on local communities. And even though it was during the tail end of the pandemic, it's still a very successful year. And it's looking at cultural heritage in the vicinity of the main European railway lines, but also at the industrial heritage, those old railway stations, the tracks and the architecture. So next slide, please. Here again, I've provided links to additional information of different initiatives, which I didn't have a chance to outline. One is the Participatory Governance of Cultural Heritage, an OMC group. We have an EU UNESCO project on education about young people in tangible cultural heritage. And there's a really good toolkit included there. At the beginning of the year, we had a workshop on complementary sources of funding. And that's a very, very good document. And it pulls together most of the sources that are available. The quality principles, which I mentioned earlier, and the European Cultural Heritage Green Paper from Europa Nostra and the Climate Heritage Network. My next slide, please. Again, this is a list of initiatives from the cultural heritage, from the stakeholders and what happened during the pandemic and what is still happening, the different surveys, the information available. And my next slide. I'm encouraging you to visit our website and there's lots and lots of information there. And soon, towards the end of the year, there will also be a funding guide relating to cultural heritage. And that will be available probably in November or December. So my last slide. is just to say thank you very much. That's just a very helicopter, very top level view of the different policies. And as I said, you have all the information, and please feel free to share the presentation with the links. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Indeed, the Commission's work on cultural heritage is quite extensive, but you indeed gave us a great helicopter view. And what is quite impressive is the fact that the Commission takes into account the various crises occurring actually now worldwide. So on that account, as a follow-up question, I would like to ask you the following. In view of all these demanding conditions arising worldwide, such as the digital revolution, the pandemic, the economic crisis, climate change, how can the EU policies and programs link into the citizens on a regional and local level? Could you share some about that?
Okay, thank you, Maria. Thank you. Just to say that the regions and their citizens are key. They're key in safeguarding cultural heritage, and they're key in the whole presentation as well. And as I mentioned there about the Sustainable Cultural Tourism report, there was a lot of emphasis on communities and involving the local communities and stakeholders in any decisions. The European Year of Cultural Heritage was very much a year dedicated to cultural heritage. The focus again was on regions, on the local communities. And this year, as I outlined, the European Year of Rail, and next year, hopefully the European Year of Youth. And again, cultural heritage and culture and the cultural and creative sectors will have a key role in that. Because why are we conserving? Why are we safeguarding cultural heritage? It's not only just for enjoyment and for tourism, it's to pass on for future generations. This is just, I mean, we are just the custodians. And so it's important that we pass this on, and by passing it on, you're also passing on the information and knowledge. The also mentioned the very interesting program, the Cultural Heritage in Action, the peer learning project. And this is over 100 local and regional policymakers. And what they're doing is they're exchanging knowledge on cultural heritage with a strong focus on participatory governance of cultural heritage. And as I mentioned earlier, too, looking at the reuse of buildings. It will, I suggest that you have a look at it. There's over 30 good practice cases from the regions with lots and lots of knowledge. The peer learning visits will continue into next year, so please feel free to circulate that. I'd also like to mention the European Committee of the Regions and the Commission last year. Our Commissioner announced the action plan with SEDEC on 4 pillars: research, innovation, education and culture. And here again, regions and cities play an essential role in achieving the green and digital transition. And I can provide a link to that too at a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for this concise presentation. There is so much happening and going on, such important and interesting initiatives that we indeed need to follow them, because they offer so many opportunities for bottom-up involvement on the field of our interest. So thank you so much for that.
And thank you. Thank you. Can I just say before I finish off that I felt this morning when I logged on, and I felt yesterday, there's a really good community spirit and a dialogue with the members of the group. And I'd like to congratulate you in relation to that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think CUBES inspires us all. I would like to believe that. I would now like to come to our second panelist, Mr. Victor Negrescu, who since 2020 is a member of the European Parliament and Vice Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education. Mr. Negrescu has taught for many years at the National University of Political Studies and Public Administration, where he also served as Vice Rector from 2018 to 2020. During his academic service, he initiated a number of programs such as the Development, International Cooperation and Humanitarian Aid Academic Program, and the Security and Technology program. Moreover, he developed two institutes, the Institute for International Cooperation and Development and the Institute for Global Digital Policies. In the field of digitization, he has served as member of the European Parliament of the Year for the Digital Agenda and has initiated pilot projects with a value of around 60 million euros. In the year 2017 to 2018, he served as Minister Delegate for European Affairs, responsible for the preparations for Romania's presidency of the Council of the European Union. As I mentioned before, today, Mr. Negrescu is member of the European Parliament and Vice Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education. Mr. Negrescu, welcome to our panel. And taking the chance and building up on your long experience, I would like to ask you if you could share your views on the following points. In January this year, the European Parliament adopted a report on achieving an effective policy legacy for the European Year of Cultural Heritage. There, it calls for increased efforts to build on the momentum of the European Year of Cultural Heritage in order to develop it into a durable policy legacy at local, regional, national, and European levels. So in your perspective, how can we make the European Year effects durable?
Thank you so much. It's good to be here and be able to be with you today. Unfortunately, I cannot stay for long, but I was capable of listening to the previous intervention. And indeed, of course, it's really important again to underline what the European Year of Cultural Heritage has brought to us, and again, to which degree, of course, we can use that experience in the years to come. And I think this is an important element to be taken into consideration. So, of course, the European Year for Cultural Heritage, in the opinion of the European Parliament, was a success because it managed again to raise the profile of this important topic. There have been many people joining the event, a lot of events across Europe, and we see that in statistics and in polls. The majority of Europeans believe that we should give, let's say, more visibility to cultural heritage, and also in the same time to have cultural heritage reflected as such also, why not in educational programs. And this is an important element, I think, that needs to be underlined. When you have close to 90% of Europeans believing so, this is a great result of the efforts done by the European community of NGOs, of stakeholders, promoting cultural heritage. So I think this was a real success, and I want to congratulate those of you that are doing that and have done so for many years in promoting cultural heritage. In the same time, we have the feeling in the European Parliament, and you mentioned in your comment that we had a resolution in the European Parliament. We have the feeling that we need to use this momentum in giving more visibility to this topic, but also in supporting it more through proper allocation of funding, in addition to what might exist, and in the same time use a new financial framework in the MFF to give value to cultural heritage. We should use also the recovery plan as a useful tool, again, in doing more in protecting the cultural heritage, in protecting the special cultural sites, in modernizing them, in adapting them, in digitalizing them, or in even, and I have to mention that, adapting them to the green requirements and challenges. And for that, we need to have a plan. So the new European Bauhaus initiative can be part of that, but we don't believe this should be the unique tool. And if we want to do that, we need additional funding. But in the same time, we need to use the tools in place and convince member states to have a proper design of those efforts. Because it's not enough to have great things happening in France and not have things being done in my country, Romania. It's not enough to have a mayor somewhere in Poland doing something nice and maybe have a region in other places in Europe that doesn't give value to cultural heritage despite its huge potential. So we need to have a coherent approach. And indeed, the pandemic has raised many challenges. It's harder again to give value to cultural sites. It's harder again for people working in the field, and especially for NGOs, to survive in the current context. It's hard even to do the management of cultural sites in the current context. It's hard again to generate an income. Also, and even the public investment in the field are hard to be implemented, also due to the pandemic. So there are a lot of challenges. Like I mentioned, we lay down in our resolution a couple of ideas, especially on how we can digitalize better, how we can have the green dimension, how to introduce that in the educational perspective. We also appreciate some of the initiatives done by the European Commission, like for instance, have this knowledge and innovation community on cultural and creative industry within the European Institute for Innovation and Technology. So there are a couple of things on which we are working closely with the Commission on that. So what I can tell you just as a general comment is that in the European Parliament, there are many supporters of cultural heritage. And again, you can count on our support. I think this is something interesting because it brings at the same table people with different political views, because we all understand that, let's say, cultural heritage is part, again, of our identity, is something that has a huge potential, is something that helps our economies, is something that, of course, defines us. And I think we have to find a proper way to integrate that in our daily lives, in education, in our activities, and in what we do, again, with the funds available at local, regional, and national and European level. So this will be just my general comment on this topic, to answer also partially your question, but in the same time to come up with additional inputs to the debate today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Negrescu. Indeed, I think you stressed a very important point. That it's important to achieve a coherent approach among member states and among regions regarding the role and the importance of culture in everyday life of the citizens. You quite correctly mentioned the importance also of education, thus linking culture and education together with all the other tools that the European Union offers us, like digitization, funding, shared resolutions, etc. And you quite also succinctly mentioned the barriers that there are there, but it's quite aspiring and hopeful that the European Union recognizes all these barriers and tries through specific tools and actions to face them and answer to these barriers and bring them down, so that indeed the value of culture is more widely recognized and in a more cohesive way among the regions and the member states. Thank you so much for your intervention. Would you like perhaps to add something else on
just a short comment? I think it's very important again to give value, and yeah, it's something that I noticed also in the discussion in the European Parliament. I think not many people at decision-making level, but also beyond, maybe also in the same time the medias, not many people are aware of, again, how many people are working in this sector. The millions of people involved in the process, and hundreds of NGOs that do this job daily, and the experts, people that have studied for many years to really contribute to this development of this dimension. I think this will be my last call at the end to the other panelists that are working on that, and maybe also to myself to a certain degree. I think we should share our expertise, our capacities, our contacts, and use our visibility as much as we have it, again, to speak about that. Because I think this gives, let's say, a human dimension to the concept of cultural heritage and brings it closer to everyone. I think this is something that needs to be done. The Commission also maybe can work on that, but also from our side, from the European Parliament, we'll try to raise a profile on that. I had an intervention in the debate that we had in the Parliament on this aspect, and I underline this important dimension because it's really something important, significant, and again, it is great to be here with you today, and again, count on my full support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, data would perhaps convince people, and as an academic yourself, you know the importance of data, and usually such data on the contribution of culture to various, not only to the economy, but also to social cohesion, to environmental protection, etc., would be quite useful in convincing even the most, those people who are not convinced about the value of culture in sustainable development. So thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your invaluable insight on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to go to our third panelist, Mrs. Tania Christova, who has been a member of the European Committee of the Regions since 2012 and has led the Bulgarian delegation. She was rapporteur for the opinion on strengthening European identity through education and culture. In 2019, she was elected chair of the Social Policy, Employment, Research, Education and Culture Commission of the European Committee of the Regions, becoming the first Bulgarian member elected to a leading position in the committee. Since 2011, Mrs. Christova is also mayor of Gabrovo, a city which is member of the Creative Tourism Network. More particularly, Gabrovo is certified by UNESCO as a creative-friendly destination and a UNESCO creative city. Indeed, the city has set an inspiring example and a model for the creative economy. So, Mrs. Christova, welcome. And based on your long experience on collaboration with the European Committee of the Regions, could you offer us your insight and views on why is it important for regions across Europe to work together in cultural heritage projects and policy making?
First of all, let me tell all of you good morning from Gabrovo. Gabrovo is a city located in the central part of Bulgaria and very actively working in the field of culture and cultural tourism. As you've mentioned, we are members of a few very important networks which really contribute to our involvement and I believe motivate the teams of the cultural institutions and NGO cultural groups that are working on our territory. I have been introduced as a member of the Committee of the Regions and of the group of SEDEC, and would like just to cite one of the messages that our President Tzitzikostas pronounced during the signature of the joint action plan between our Commission and Maria Gabriel, in order to understand how important it is for local and regional authorities to develop these policies that are closely related to the quality of living and to the sustainable policies. And he says that bringing Europe closer to people, building sustainable, resilient, innovative regional and local communities, and striving for our values by means of education and culture, these are our main priorities. Now, I will try to focus on some of the main elements that are important from my perspective as a mayor, and that will justify the importance of supporting culture and working together for providing new opportunities and attracting also tourists and visitors, and also providing job opportunities. The previous speaker mentioned something very important, which became quite obvious, especially during the COVID crisis. And it is the fact that in the cultural field, in the cultural sector, especially in my medium-sized city, which is approximately 80,000 citizens, we have very big number of experts, of people, of cultural agents that are working and earning their living. And during that COVID period, they were in front, together with us, before a serious challenge. And I will start with something which is very important, especially when we involve politicians. Those of us who realize that culture is really important and could be the fourth pillar of sustainable development, and also involve on board digital and green transition. I believe we'll have difficult destinies, but finally they will bring their cities and their citizens to the prosperous and sustainable development. And by saying this, I would like to mention that, especially during crisis, it is very important to realize that culture, which is the element that helped us to go through this crisis physically and psychologically more easier, is one of the main components of the new communities that we have to work to establish together with our governments, together with the European Union, and of course, together with our citizens. And here I would like to say that art and culture need to be really promoted as key enablers, which will strengthen our European identity. And this was one of the messages that I conveyed with my opinion that I drafted some years ago. And in this way, we will try and be successful in enhancing its social function and give much more prominent role of the culture in the debate for our common European future. We should also reaffirm that culture, as it is said in many of the declarations produced during last months, that culture must be the spirit and must lie at the heart of the European Union international relations, and could be used as a quite successful instrument in combination with the regional and local potential to be the successful ambassador that will provide for sharing our regional and local values, and combined with new technical instruments, this could provide for new projects and new collaboration. It is very important for local and regional authorities and for all of us to continue encouraging cross-border cooperation, which should become a priority in the cultural strand. And here I could mention that my city has more than 10 twinning cities with which we maintain contacts and try now, of course, via technologies to maintain collaborations in the field of culture. Cities and regions, as I've mentioned, which are able to harness their history, that are able to tell their stories, that are able to reinvent their new perspectives, are those that will also be able to attract more businesses and will be more friendly to their citizens. I'm sure that if there are enough data, and here probably more evidence-based information should be available for the local and regional level, we could measure the impact of culture and creative industry on cities that support this policy compared to the ones that are focused in other realms of development. It is very important to work together with national or international partners and to use European projects in order to regenerate the urban areas and to involve different types of arts and culture in order to develop and to support these beautiful areas that each and every city in Europe has and could use as perspective for cultural development. It is necessary to design different creative solutions and to combine them with the digital competencies, which unfortunately during the crisis, even in my city, allowed us to see how important and how big sometimes could be the digital divide, and this should be addressed in order to overcome this shortage. Therefore, it is definitely very important to use different projects and financial support to boost and to capitalize on the digital opportunities. Of course, thinking of the fine balance that should be established between the tangible and the intangible, and also the virtual and the physical, which is related to this aspect. In line with encouraging new technologies, we should also consider how important is as public and local and regional authorities to develop our new plans, our new strategies, which will help us strengthen the cultural and creative sector, and also to design those projects that will really support this ecosystem and will allow for its further successful development. It was mentioned how important it is, the new initiative Bauhaus, and also the green thinking, which could be really supported very much by the culture. And in this aspect, we can use this perspective to address some of the challenges that we, I believe, meet horizontally across whole Europe. Because, for example, currently I'm in the process of implementing a number of big cultural projects, which involve also physical transformation and regeneration and preservation of cultural assets. And unfortunately, we meet serious problems with lacking specific expertise, which will help us to preserve the old premises. And this is something that will have to convince us that culture and education should be very much going together. And culture should be, with the help of new technologies, of course, very helpful to attract the attention and to use the potential of young generation. And I will finish here by telling that in some of our cultural institutions, thanks to the support of the European Union, we have managed to combine new technologies, ICT, in order to tell interesting historical facts and to present the interesting assets in a way that is attractive both to young and to elderly generation. And I think that this is part of the solution that we should continue using, and of course allowing in our new initiatives to involve and to listen and to provide new opportunities in order to develop the social aspect of culture, which is one of the main potential, but to some extent it could be one of the main challenges due to different nuances of the situations that we can meet across Europe, and thereby working to demonstrate and to make a full competent sense of the European identity is also very much on the agenda of our plans that we try to develop here together with different national and international partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christova. Indeed, you highlight a number of important topics, like the importance of cross-border links and synergies on creating cultural innovation, the use of digital tools, etc. So I will take, but respecting the time budget, because it would be great to talk more on these topics that you said. But I would like to take up the opportunity to ask you, as Mayor of Gabrovo, to tell us a few words on your experiences regarding the cultural innovations and programs that were created on account of Gabrovo's participation in the Creative Cities Network.
Yes,
just a couple of examples.
Yes, we have the privilege to be the only Bulgarian city so far that is part of this network, and we were motivated to work together with that network in order to attract more visitors in our cultural sites, because tourism and culture are very closely intertwined, especially in our city. And because the time is really probably pressing us, I will just indicate those measures that we use during that difficult COVID period. Through the network, we promoted our creative tourism and the opportunities that we present as a creative city. Here I would just mention the fact that we have a combination of unique museums. We have the only museum, I believe, we believe in the world, but probably in Europe, which is committed to show the humor and satire, mainly the political satire. We have the unique open-air museum, which presents live crafts from the revival period of Bulgaria. We are the city with the only museum of education in Bulgaria, and we are probably the first city that approximately 10 years ago developed the first interactive museum, which was dedicated on our industrial development, as we used to be really very important factor in the industrial profile, not only of Bulgaria, but during some periods also in Europe. Therefore, we combined all these unique elements, and through the network, we worked together with other partners and tried to develop new tourism creative products that provide for the visitors, for the tourists, to participate, to be involved in creating and experiencing, because we believe that this is something that will be assigned really added value, and which is in our realms is quite appropriate. We also produced video materials that during this COVID period, and we shared them through the network. And of course, we disseminate information about our annual calendar of activities and of events that we organize mainly with international participation. And I will here stop by saying that although COVID-19 presented many challenges to us, we managed during 2020 and 2021 to adapt our festivals and our initiatives in such a way that they were not postponed, and by taking into consideration the health measures, we managed to organize them and to demonstrate our serious support both to the cultural sector and on the other hand to provide the citizens with the opportunity to experience culture and to use it as at its social and psychological dimension.
Quite an impressive list of cultural innovations that you have instigated. So no wonder Gabrovo is a creative city. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us, and best of luck in continuing your amazing work as mayor of the city. Now, I would like to introduce Mrs. Chiara Dall'Aglio, who is responsible for EU projects and the PI Interreg Europe Shares Villa Pambria. She was former coordinator area tourism and integrated promotion of Villa Pambria SPA. And she is currently responsible for the SHARE project which stands for Sustainable Approach to Cultural Heritage for the Urban Area Requalification of Europe. SHARE addresses the issue of cultural heritage management and preservation under all its forms in urban settings through exchange of experiences. It is carried out by a partnership of 7 regions from different countries. So at this point, I can't wait to ask our next panelist, Mrs. Dal Alio, to tell us more about the SHARE project and, forgive the pun, share with us some of its results.
Thank you very much. The pun was used many times before because it's quite quick. Share and share. Anyway, thank you very much. Yes, SHARE is a project financed by Interreg Europe. So it is devoted to exchanging experiences in order to improve local policies. We don't deal, therefore, with investments, but with sharing among each other's best practices and also bad practices about the issues that we are dealing with. In our case, sustainability and cultural heritage in urban settings, in order to find solutions at local level to improve our policies. SHARE started in 2017, it ended in 2020, but the implementing activities were during the first 2 years. The last 2 years were devoted to monitoring of our implementation plan. What was the preoccupation of us partners when we started SHARE? It was to relieve our cultural heritage in fragile settings like urban cities from the pressure applied by residents and visitors alike. Those were the now golden years of over-tourism, something that we now miss so much. But at the same time, the pressure that was applied then will start again soon. And it is a problem that doesn't concern only the major destinations such as Venice or Barcelona, but also minor, and I use the terms between brackets, but smaller destinations off the beaten tracks, where cities, hamlets are sometimes overcome by the pressure applied by tourism, but also by residents to the cultural heritage. The partnership was composed by us as Sviluppo Umbria region in Italy as lead partner, and the county of Östergötland in Sweden, Pannon European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation in Hungary, city of Šibenik in Croatia, the region of Extremadura in Spain, and Northeast Region Development Agency of Romania. But we also had an added value of an advisory partner, University of Greenwich in London, who provided us with a framework for basing our exchange of experience on researches and collecting information in a research-based form. How did we work on this? We basically we were lucky enough not to be affected by the pandemic, except for the last year of activity. So we organized meetings and study visits to each country and each region, but also we collected information among ourselves and the best way to approach sustainability and cultural heritage through a common framework of research. So in the end, what we came out with was a collection of case studies among all of us, and local action plans for each region, where, thanks to the exchange of experiences, the partner could improve their policies in terms of sustainability. As an overview of what we came out with after all this work and these exchanges that we had, the key issues that were the main findings of our project are the necessity, when we deal with sustainable approaches to cultural heritage in cities, the necessity of collaboration among especially the public institution, but basically among all the stakeholders that are involved in dealing with cultural heritage. What we can say is that the cultural heritage and sustainability in cultural heritage regards 4 stakeholder groups: the residents, the tourists, the businesses, and the professionals who manage heritage sites and events. And these are both public and private. And aspects of sustainable management are reuse of repurposing of heritage sites, accessibility and inclusiveness for all, data management, mobility. Mobility is a key issue in accessing cultural heritage in urban setting, and that goes for private cars, private mobility, but also for the mobility that is the cargo movement of goods in cities, and fostering cooperation among levels of public administration dealing with cultural heritage, because this is one of our major problems, that public administrations involved with cultural heritage sometimes are organized in a way that different departments deal with different aspects of cultural heritage and sustainability and don't dialogue among each other. So collaboration among these public institutions, among different departments, involvement of the public, involvement of tourists is essential for sustainable cultural heritage in cities and urban settings. This can also be done by creating a one-stop shop for providing and collecting information for regions where there's no tourist agency, a regional tourist agency, or a public-private DMO. Creation of such a DMO is essential in order to organize both the product, let's call it this way, the sustainable cultural heritage product, but also organizing the accessibility to cultural heritage. Another key finding is the essentials to provide for an experience that is sustainable in cities is the creation of slow mobility itineraries, walking, cycling within the city center in order to allow for people to visit it in a way that is sustainable without using cars, and also to create itineraries that are off the beaten tracks, so that the pressure to the main attraction can be relieved by directing flows of tourists, but even residents, to find and to look at lesser known areas of the cities. At the same time, because the cities are not living in a bubble, you need to also create a sustainable mobility between the city and the surrounding countryside, or between the city and other cities. This can also be done with the slow mobility itineraries. There has been an explosion, especially here in Italy, but everywhere in Europe, of hiking trails, even pilgrimage trails that have been now reopened and made more accessible. And this can also be used by bike or by walking at short distances, of course, to reach different cities in order to avoid mobility issues in terms of private use of cars and CO2 emissions. And finally, one of the most original findings that we had during our project was the concept of smart shrinking. Cities are not only subject to the pressure of tourism, but sometimes, especially small cities, are shrinking because residents move away to look for work or for opportunities outside of the smaller cities all throughout Europe. And smart shrinking has to be managed in order not to create empty spaces that are then taken over by Airbnbs, like it happened in other major cities in Europe, or by creating empty spaces where cultural heritage is not enjoyed and accessible as it should be. Its share officially closed in 2020, but Interreg Europe provided the opportunity for closed projects to access new funds in order to deal with COVID, to the post-COVID aspects of dealing with sustainability and cultural heritage. We know that there's a renewed interest and preoccupation about sustainability even after COVID, not only because of the health emergency, but also because the last few months, there was an overlapping of climate crisis all throughout Europe, all throughout the world, I may say, but all throughout Europe, especially with flooding and wildfires at the same time, extreme heat waves. Therefore, we hope that with this extra year of activity that we've been granted, to find the solutions that they may combine what happened with the dealing with COVID emergencies, also to a sustainable approach to cultural heritage. So by next year, we may know more about sustainability and dealing with emergencies such as COVID. I would like also to highlight that SHARE was a project, a relevant project during the European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018 that was mentioned before. And we also participated to 3 editions of the European Week of Cities and Regions in Brussels, the last one in a digital format because it was in 2020. More information can be found on the SHARE website and within the Interreg Europe community. And I will, of course, be available for any additional information. And I will post the website link for the website for anyone who wants to check on SHARE. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sure we will all rush to check because the results that you described, the findings, are so so important and so significant, actually. So very interesting what you found out and the recommendations that you are doing, building on these results. So because you mentioned the Interreg projects, I would like to ask you the following. Considering your long experience in working with projects that use heritage as a lever of development. So what is, to your opinion, the added value of cooperation projects such as Interreg for the repurposing of a heritage site, specifically in rural and urban areas?
Well, based on my experience, what I would say is that even though we now have the world at our fingertips, we can check information everywhere on the internet, it is still essential to see for yourself and to learn from the practitioner, for the people involved in cultural heritage on how to do things. Europe is a diverse and exciting community that in order to find solutions at local level, sometimes you need to explore. And nothing beats cooperating with other regions, other cities, other communities around Europe in terms of sharing together common preoccupation, approaches and solutions, and sometimes finding not only a best practice somewhere else that can be implemented in your own region, but also finding ways to use better what you already have. Cooperation is essential because it improves local polities and day-to-day activities, and also it allows for having a new vision of what you do and what can be done. And even though, as I said, now a lot of information, a lot of things can be done online, we found, especially we shared, the study visits were especially useful in order to see for ourselves what happened in other countries and in other regions, and to learn from that experience and from the people who worked on the fields in those cultural heritage sites. So I do think that although it may seem like there's nothing new to learn, I think that learning from other experiences and through cooperation is still ongoing and is a never-ending process.
Thank you very much. Indeed, cooperation. Again, it's a key word that comes again and again in our discussions, the importance of cooperation. And what really struck me before when you described things was the fact that you mentioned the cooperation and the involvement of citizens and tourists alike. And on that note, I would like to come to our next panelist, Mr. Patrick Torrent, who has a very long service in the tourism area. with studies in industrial psychology for the organizations and in law. He has served for more than 30 years the development of the tourism sector, particularly in Catalonia. Indicatively, he was responsible for the organization of Catalonia's Royal Automobile Club and was the manager of ADD Corporate Trips, a company specializing in the organization of incentive trips, conventions, congresses, and events. He has also served as General Deputy Director of the Consortium Turisme de Catalunya and as Deputy Director of the Catalan Tourist Board. Currently, he is the Executive Director of said board, position from which he stimulated the definition of 2 strategic plans of tourism in Catalonia and coordinated the first tourist marketing plan of Catalonia. He has shared his invaluable experience on tourism as an associate teacher at different universities and as speaker and organizer of several symposia, seminars, workshops, and fora focusing on tourism and tourism marketing. Since 2015, Mr. Torrent represents Catalonia in the network Next Tour, the voice of European regions for sustainable tourism. Today, he is the president of this network, which gathers 36 tourism regional authorities and 36 associate organizations. Mr. Torrent, apparently you have invaluable experience in the tourism sector, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here so that you can offer us your insight on specifically on tourism. Therefore, I would like to ask you to share with us your views on how the European regions are bringing the resident at the center of the tourism policy.
Thank you very much, Maria, for your nice words and for your presentation. And thank you for the Assembly for European Regions and the CUBES project to inviting us from Negrescu in order to share our vision, and especially our vision about how can we put residents at the center of our strategy in terms of have this evolution towards a more sustainable and competitive tourism model for all of us, for all destinations. It's a great pleasure to share this panel with these other experts in this table, and in particular with Ms. Anne Grady, with whom Negrescu has been cooperating since the past 3 years. But first of all, a few words about what Negrescu is. Next slide, please. Negrescu is the network of the European regions for sustainable tourism. Since 2007, Negrescu is the voice of European regions committed to sustainable economic, social, and cultural and environmental as an essential driver of the competitiveness of the destination. Now we are not 36, 39, because last week we approved the addition of 3 more regions in Negrescu, 39 members, tourism authorities in 30 associated members, and universities, research institutes, representatives of tourism companies, and sustainable tourism associations. Next slide, please. The members of Negrescu are committed to develop and implementing this strategy, this 5S strategy for the tourism of tomorrow strategy, the tourism of tomorrow model, is focused in these 5 axes: skills and talent, safety and resilience, statistics and measurability, sociocultural balance, and smart destinations. We are currently working for the recovery of our regional tourism ecosystem by targeting 3 main flagships of the European Union. The European Union Green Deal, via our climate action plan we are developing as part of our declaration on tourism climate emergency. And second one, in the digital age, via our strategic project developed under the S3 tourism platform, the Tourism of Tomorrow Lab, based in data. And the third one, closer to the citizens, via our initiative, the Barcelona Declaration, Better Places to Live, Better Places to Visit, which I will explain you today. Next slide, please. In 2018, in the framework of the European Year of Cultural Heritage, Negrescu, in cooperation with Europa Nostra, European Travel Commission, European Cultural Tourism Network, and with the support of Anne Grady and the European Heritage Alliance 2.0, concentrated all our efforts in bringing together the tourism and the cultural sector to find joint solutions to problems we are facing at the time. unhappiness of the residents towards tourism, loss of authenticity in our destinations, and unbalance with distribution of tourism flows. Next slide, please. The Barcelona Declaration, Better Places to Live, Better Places to Visit, which was launched in Barcelona in April 2018, is the consensus of the tourism and cultural heritage stakeholders on how to better balance the use of cultural heritage, the demands of the tourism industry, and the needs of the local community. Via this initiative, Nextur aims to provide a guidance to the members in this transformative process by bringing the needs of the destinations and its local community at the center of the tourism policymaking, of the business development, and of the tourist products experience offered. Next slide, please. 5 key principles to be jointly applied are proposed by this declaration. The first one, the first principle, smart and inclusive governance. Is for us important to say that what is good for residents is good for visitors. To improve the social and cultural sustainability of tourism and contribute to the consideration of the visitor as a temporary resident. For us is a key issue to consider visitor as a temporary resident. To create an intelligent and inclusive governance model that also includes, obviously, the resident. The principle 2, adding value to the sense of place. Residents as part of the cultural tourism experience and the best ambassador of the territory and identity. To reinforce the sense of place through the definition of authentic and immersive experiences in the local culture and an application that brings the two communities together, not only digitally. The third principle is using a holistic vision for marketing and preservation, promoting hidden cultural heritage while being prudent in promoting overexposed ones. To find an equilibrium between marketing and preservation, placing value over volume. The fourth principle is balancing place, people, and business, better measure to better manage, to develop an indicator system for monitoring the balance between destination, resident, and visitors. And the fifth principle, connecting people to people. Citizens and visitors search for new and transformative experiences. To empower visitors to use technology to facilitate peer-to-peer connections, helping to have this direct link between visitors and residents. Next slide, please. This is the graphic path of this vision of the European regions for the tourism of tomorrow in the sense of these better places to live, better places to visit. Next, please. Despite starting this initiative in 2018, the challenges that the regions and our destination and facing nowadays in this post-COVID-19 era are the same. Overcrowded areas, now rural, before urban, but now both rural and urban. Residents' perception, worried about the recent massification of less tourist areas, is one of the consequences of the COVID-19 effects, and how to better manage visitor flows. We are all strong believers that this is the path we need to follow, because sustainable tourism also means looking for the well-being of our residents, of our communities, of all of us. Our goal is to ensure tourism brings in added value to our local community, not only in economic terms, but also in values. Tourism is an activity of peace, is an activity of open-minded, is an activity of solidarity, is an activity that opens us to the better commitment, better dialogue between cultures, and is a vehicle of peace, as Taleb Rifai said, former Secretary General of UNWTO. We are all of us working for the recovery of our industry while we aim to transform our destinations to become greener, digital, and more engaged with its community.
It seems that we're facing, I think we have recovered the technical issue. Mr. Torrent, can you hear us? Perhaps my internet connection was stuck. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Maria.
Okay. I missed the end of Mr. Torrent's speech. I suppose I can proceed with a follow-up question because I missed a point in the end. May I proceed, Johanna?
Yes, please go ahead. Patrick, can you hear us? Because we missed the very last part. You froze.
Patrick? Mr. Torrent?
Yes, excuse me.
You're back.
I'm back. Thank you for waiting for me, because I have problems with my computer because it's reset. I don't know which is the reason, but now I'm connected by my iPad, and then thank you for waiting, and thank you for your patience. I don't know if you are hearing me well, and but well, everything is okay. Okay, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Now your clone has disappeared as well.
Yeah. No, I think everything is okay, the video and the audio as well. Then just to say you my final words about this Barcelona Declaration is our commitment in order to put the residents at the center. In fact, from Negrescu used to talk before this Barcelona Declaration about the need we have in our sector for public-private partnerships. Now let us introduce a new letter. It's Public-Private Citizens Partnership, PPCP, because without the residents at the center of this reflection, it will be impossible to achieve this competitive and sustainable tourism we need in terms of cultural and social sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. In major tourism destinations like Barcelona or even Athens in Greece are suffering from the hordes of mass tourism still visiting these cities. And these cities really face many challenges in how to balance between the needs of the preservation of heritage, the actual everyday needs of the residents, and the need for tourists to become satisfied and gain the experiences they were hoping for. So on that account, I would like to ask you, how does the region of Catalonia address this topic of balancing among culture, its residents, and tourism?
Yes, it's a good question. We are developing a lot of activities. In fact, from Catalonia, and our marketing and strategic plan for our destination is focused in that we are saying the 4Ds strategy. 4Ds strategy is the tourism with more deseasonalization, deconcentration, diversification, and distribution of wealth of tourism. We are just promoting products that are focused in this 4Ds strategy. And it's for this reason that, for example, yesterday we presented a new product that is the Grand Tour of Catalonia. Catalonia in the past was created thanks to the development of the big hubs of tourism. Barcelona, Costa Brava, Costa Daurada, singular municipalities in these destinations, but never working in the distribution of the tourism flows among our territory. Now we are working on this, in fact, is going back to the basics, because the origin of tourism was the tour, was the touring, was the Grand Tour. Then the Grand Tour of Catalonia is the new product we are launching now after pandemics, and offering the capacity to bring to our customers a more authentic experience, discovering the roots of our culture, our gastronomy, our landscapes. In fact, Catalonia, I think one of our main assets as a destination is our diversity we have. Is this diversity the main element to discover thanks to products like the Grand Tour of Catalonia? This is one of them. The other one that is important to say to you is the commitment now. We presented yesterday as a World Tourism Day, the new deal from the government of Catalonia for responsible tourism. Is a deal that puts the resident at the center. In the past, we were focused in attracting tourists, in attracting tourism flows to our destinations, and not thinking specifically in the resident as a part of this ecosystem in the destination. Now, the marketing strategy must be focused in the residents at the same time than in the visitor. It's important to say that the residents and visitors are part of our targets from the Catalan Tourist Board in order to develop this new marketing that we are focusing, but not exclusively by the tourism authorities, not exclusively by the DMOs. It's important this commitment from the other parts of the government of Catalonia. Let me say that the Department of Culture, the Department of Agriculture, now the Department of Health of our government are involved in this commitment, in this deal, in order to think in this right balance between residents and visitors in order to offer the most social and cultural experience possible to our visitors, and the more balanced experience as well to our residents, considering visitors as a temporary residents always.
Thank you so much for your insight on that. And indeed, the residents are expected to get the benefits of tourism, but there is so much research on all the evils of tourism on the residents, and it's really important that now residents are considered as equal partners, let's say, to tourists in designing strategies, marketing, or tourism strategies. So it's a good innovation, I would say. And I'm wishing you all the best in making Catalonia even more livable and beautiful also for its residents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So now we have covered also the tourism sector, and what remains to be covered is the issues of diversity and inclusion. And so last but not least, I would like to come to the chair of our meeting, Mrs. Feres, who is a regional council member for Värmland, Sweden. She works as a biomedical analyst and runs her own business as an interpreter, working with exclusion, inclusion, language, and cultural heritage. She is chairwoman of the Healthcare Committee, a member of the County Council, Assembly of European Regions, and the Labour Market and Social Affairs Committee. She is also a lay judge in Värmland District Court in Sweden. So, Mrs. Hess, you have actively engaged with significant work regarding inclusion and exclusion. And we know cultural heritage can play a major role in building more prosperous and inclusive communities. This involves engaging communities with their heritage, including the disadvantaged and marginalized groups. Do you have an example of a good practice at the regional level in managing cultural heritage in an inclusive way?
Thank you, Maria. First of all, I want to thank you all speakers with long experience and competence in cultural heritage. It was very interesting, actually. Yes, thank you. I can mention some in what we are working in Värmland. For example, in Värmland, we have recently adopted a regional development plan, which point us out that the overall aims of the region, such as economic growth and social cohesion, is linked to the cultural heritage, and it's very important. And the cultural heritage is an asset for the region in several dimensions, as a sort of primary commodity for our tourist industry, and not at least as bond between society groups. The perspective have been increasingly more important as the regional culture diversity has expanded. That's why I am commitment to ERN Intercultural Regions Network, which is an initiative with AER commitment to build intercultural competency on a regional level.
Very much, thank you. Indeed, this is quite important, and we usually forget about the diversity of Europe. And I don't mean about the diversity which has become mainstream now, but about the influx of migrants or of groups that, despite their long existence in the European continent, still remain quite excluded, like the Roma or other people of other religions. So it's quite important to see that and take care that these groups are not excluded and they have access to their own heritage, so that they indeed become included and not have to apply to the cultural norms of mainstream Europe, if I may say that. So with Mrs. Hess, the panel is completed, and I would like to thank all of the speakers, the panelists, for their insight and experiences that they have shared with us. I would like now to ask our digital audience if they would have some questions for our panelists. Please feel free either to raise your digital hand and speak your question, or write down the comments or the questions that you have to our speakers on the chat space. Don't be shy, I'm sure you all have questions. While we're waiting for some questions from the audiences, I would like to pose a question to our panelists. Perhaps this would give also an incentive for a wider dialogue. So, according to your points of view and your fields of specialization, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to ensuring the sustainable development of cultural heritage? You come from different sectors. So what is, to your opinion, the biggest challenge? Ms. Hess?
Yes, please. Maybe I can start. I think one of the biggest challenges is to link the right range of competences to the projects and to enable the participants to do what they are good at. And I'm thinking about various Interreg projects also, which sometimes are associated with a high level of administration. That's my point.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess.
If I can add to that, and as I already mentioned during my presentation, I think one of the biggest challenges is that sustainability involves so many different aspects and different departments and many stakeholders, different stakeholders. Therefore, I think the biggest challenge is actually to have everyone on the same line, and for different departments, even in the same organization, to get involved at the same time and at the same level in a sustainability project. In terms of cultural heritage in urban, but even in rural areas, the accessibility of cultural heritage is one thing, and another thing is the mobility, but they are both combined in terms of ensuring that cultural heritage is approached in a sustainable way. And sometimes the two departments just don't talk with each other. So I think one of the biggest challenge, and really it's one that could be addressed quite quickly, would be to involve all the stakeholders, starting with the public administration, in any sustainability project that has to do with cultural heritage and beyond cultural heritage.
Thank you, Chiara. Would somebody else like to comment? Anne,
Hi.
please.
Yeah, if I could jump in then, I think it's a very interesting question. And the pandemic provided, this last 18, 19 months, have provided an opportunity for us to reflect and to look at the whole element of sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier, and the other speakers, about access and how do you manage access. And we don't go back to the old days of honeypots and certain areas being overrun with tourists and other areas having no visitors or very few visitors. I'd also like to mention, because I touched on it very briefly, is there's an open method of coordination working group of experts looking at this whole area of sustainability. And in their mandate, what they're looking at is how they can share information and best practices, and how they can integrate cultural policies and perspectives into each individual national sustainable development strategy. And I think the outcome of that will be very interesting and very relevant for this discussion. The report should be published by the end of next year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We also have a question from one of our attendees, from Eileen. And she asks, how is climate change incorporated into sustainable tourism? Quite a tough question, actually. Patrick, would you like to comment? Please unmute yourself. Oops.
Yes, let me offer the answer that we are developing from Negrescu, from the European Network of Regions for a Competitive and Sustainable Tourism, is our climate action plan. In fact, from regions, we decided that to think that after pandemics, the most important challenge that is not located in a particular part of the time, but it's a structural challenge, is obviously the climate emergency. And it's for the reason that we are supporting the climate emergency, the tourism declares. The tourism declares climate emergency was boosted by one of our members, that is Business Scotland, that is one of the leaders of the tourism declares movement. And we are finding for adhesions for different institutions, stakeholders, and agents of the tourism ecosystem, but from the regions, from Negrescu as an association, but for the particular members as well. We are now developing this adhesion to this tourism declares. Declaring climate emergency is declaring our commitment to develop products that are facing this climate emergency with a particular action plan. This climate action plan that is being coordinated by Negrescu, but is developed particularly by each region that is committed with this climate action plan. I think it's important to act. It's important to have declarations and to talk, but in particular, it's necessary to act in concrete actions focused in energy, in water consumption, in waste treatments, in all the elements that, in particular, our industry could manage in a short time. It's for this the reason that from Negrescu we are now boosting this declaration, this tourism declares, declaring emergency, declaring climate emergency, in order to be conscious about the risk we have for the future, because our competitiveness, not only the model we have, but exclusively the model, is in risk. And we are really convinced that tourism of tomorrow will be sustainable or will not to be. And the first acts of this sustainability is environment, then cultural, social, economical, and everything. But the first one is the climate emergencies. For this reason that Negrescu is supporting tourism declares.
Thank you. Would another panelist like to comment on the question? Because we have, yes, please.
Yeah, if I could just say too, and it was something that was touched on in our OMC group, the Sustainable Cultural Tourism OMC group. We touched on the whole idea of climate, and then this will be looked at even in more depth in the climate change and cultural heritage OMC group as well. So just to mention that, and to have a look at that report, as that I provided the link to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question from the audience, from Anya. So she's stating, I'm reading, the 26th of September annually is celebrated as the European Day of Languages. To quote the Council of Europe Secretary General, the European Day of Languages reminds us that all voices matter and that together we can overcome linguistic and cultural divides in our societies. So Anna's question is, since languages help in preserving our history and cultures, is there any provision for the recognition and celebration of migrant languages, especially African migrants in European societies?
Let us offer another element from Negrescu, if it's possible from us. The capacity of languages and culture in particular, in general, but languages in particular, to provide singularity, identity to the tourism experience is crucial. In our opinion, when we were working in different reflections during the European Year of Cultural Heritage, we were talking about languages and about the capacity to preserve this richness in Europe in order to maintain the capacity to singularize and to preserve the identity of our destinations. From Negrescu, in the Barcelona Declaration, Better Places to Live, Better Places to Visit, one of the elements that we are fighting to defend it is this diversity, the capacity to preserve the languages as one of the main elements to experience the particular inclusion and adhesion from the visitors with the residents community. One of the ways that better helps to have this mutual understanding is the capacity of visitors to try to learn some words, some sentences in the language, in the particular, in the local language of people that is receiving. Is the best way of hospitality to learn others, to be part of the community, and is the best way to preserve this good balance between visitors and residents for the visitors as well, to be interested in learn these local languages and to help to create this atmosphere of communication in these different communities. I think is absolutely crucial, and in our opinion, the preservation of the capacity and the diversity to boost these languages as one of the elements to preserve the identity of the destinations is crucial for the preservation of the authenticity of these destinations.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And if I may add, we see in museums today a big change of orientation to in the ways that they deal with colonial heritage, right, or with heritage that has been stolen by African populations, just to focus on Anya's question. So we see that the museums now revisit the Eurocentric ways in which they have viewed their collections until now. And of course, this is in the tangible area, in the material culture, but I believe that this opens also the way for new ways to deal and revisit intangible culture, to which languages are a part of. So I think that we can wait in the imminent future to see more actions in regarding the ways to deal with languages in Europe on a more equity basis. So let's see, I think the future is hopeful. So our panel is coming to a close. So optionally, I would like to pose the last question and ask if somebody from the panel would like to sum up in a Twitter quote their perception of innovation in cultural heritage. So if you would write what your perception on innovation in cultural heritage is in a Twitter quote, what would you write?
Yes, thank you, Maria. Cultural innovation is knowledge. Based on knowledge is heritage.
Thank you. I would retweet that.
Welcome. Yes, I can do that.
Tania?
I think that the good combination or the fine combination of innovation and cultural heritage would guarantee the sustainable development of Europe and the demonstration of the richness of European identity. I really believe in this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would, what we did with our project was not focusing on tech. We did a lot of work on social innovation and inclusion and sustainability and accessibility. So I would probably use as an hashtag, not only tech.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria, I would say, and following on from there are really good suggestions, it's safeguarding cultural heritage for all. And for a hashtag, may I present Europe for Culture?
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Patrick?
Yes, in our opinion, innovation in process, innovation in channels, innovation in products, innovation in governance. 4 pillars for innovation, not just in technology, not just this tech innovation, is everywhere. And we need probably start by innovation in governance in order to ensure that culture will be the pillar of our more sustainable tourism that we want.
I should have expected that all of you would come up with a great Twitter quote, since you are all into marketing and into and big lovers of culture. So it's no big surprise that you managed this question so well. Thank you very much for joining our panel. It has been a great honor having you here and moderating this panel. And I would also like to thank our attendees for being here with us and getting inspired by your excellent presentations and answers. It has been really amazing in also posting lots of helpful links to cultural initiatives. And now I would like to call for the coffee break of 10 minutes. Please stay with us, just turn your mics off, go for some coffee or some water, and please come back in 10 minutes so that we can present and showcase our CUBES project. Thank you very much for your attention. Small break, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. But anyway, it's with the panelists. Oh no, we were there in front of everyone. Yes.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me well? Perfect.
So I think it's time to start again. What I would suggest is that we do a quick Slido, because I have a very important question for you all. I'm actually wondering what you do to stay focused in a webinar. So what I do in generally is I drink a lot of water, drink coffee too, but I'd be really interested to hear from you what you do to stay focused. I think in this past year, we've all invented all sorts of different things. So can you see the poll? I think I've started it. Anna, are you able to access it?
Now, yes. Now I am in.
Okay. Then you have to answer.
But maybe explain like how it works. I'm not sure everybody is familiar with Slido, so maybe we should just.
Okay. Well, basically you go to slido.com and you insert that code that I put in the chat. There's 921097, and then answer the question that is open at the moment. There's also a direct link, if that helps.
Must we reveal our secrets?
Yes, of course. That's why we're here. Okay. Yes, open window, absolutely, me too. Wide open. Any other? Yeah, notes. I'm really interested in hearing from you, so you really have to answer that one. Let me know if it is difficult to access Slido. There's no stupid question anyway.
No, I can confirm it was very, very easy. Very, very easy and quick.
Awesome, thank you. Drink water? Yeah, me too. A lot of water. Then I have to get up all the time. Sometimes when it's possible to switch off the camera, it's nice to walk as well. I know some people do that. Just sitting all day is difficult. Cool, thank you so much for the answers. Yeah, keywords too, yeah. Self-flagellation, come on, no. Okay. Well, thank you. Then I have another question for you. I'll stop that one. I have another one. I wonder if you can access it. I'd be interested to hear from you what was most relevant for you so far in the workshop. So what was most important, interesting for you this morning in the workshop? And it can be small things. Actually, I have that belief that small things are the ones that move us a little bit further, not the big things. So feel free to share very small things. And it's anonymous, by the way, so I don't know who wrote what. Okay, the involvement of residents, yeah, and also what is a resident? Definitely, that for me as well was something that residents are considered long-term tourists. New ways to include various stakeholders, yeah, in designing policies and programs for sustainable culture. Yes, definitely. The pandemic has shown us our needs to enjoy culture together. That the need for togetherness was really high, right? And the many initiatives on climate change and sustainability, yes, all the examples, it's heartwarming. Addressing the problem of climate change. Okay. I think we'll move to the next step. So I'm going to give the floor to Maria again, this time in another role. Maria, you're going to share the highlights from the policy paper and sustainability of the project. And the floor is yours, Maria.
Sorry for that small break. It's my turn to present. Yes, okay, I'm sorry. But that's the perils of presenting at a private space. Things happen that you can really. Okay, so thank you very much. Hope you can see my PowerPoint. Yes, great. I would like to present now some highlights from the CUBES policy paper, which completes the project's deliverables. But firstly, we must underline CUBES' main aims, which are to promote cultural sustainability, cultural democracy, and the participatory governance of cultural resources. These belong to the main cultural policy priorities of the European Union, the Council of Europe, as well as the United Nations. A main cause of concern, though, is that many people and stakeholders, particularly from a bottom-up perspective, lack the necessary theoretical and technical knowledge to assume ownership and to administer their cultural resources. Therefore, CUBES aimed to develop an online training program and relevant digital tools to provide learning opportunities to everyone interested in the sustainable administration of their cultural resources. This way, CUBES aspired to foster the involvement of various society groups in the administration of their local cultural wealth by breaking down intellectual barriers. Naturally, CUBES is grounded theoretically on the main policies and recommendations of the EU, the Council of Europe, and the United Nations, and on relevant scientific literature. The main thematics are sustainable development and culture, participatory governance, and lifelong learning. Taking a brief overview of CUBES deliverables, we began with the best practices review paper, during which we proceeded with literature review, review of the existing educational programs on the topic of our interest, and also we asked cultural professionals for their opinions regarding which are the basic training needs that they face in a contemporary environment. Based on their answers, we designed the CUBES interactive curriculum, which will be presented later on, the digital toolbox and resources for users, as well as a handbook for adult educators, so that they can proceed with transmitting the CUBES content to their adult learners. Last but not least, we tried to draft a policy paper and relevant recommendations depending on the findings of our research and on the findings of on the project. Indeed, in many of its stages, CUBES sought the insight and experience of their stakeholders. We used this approach to design our very curriculum, as I said before, as well as to form our policy paper, to which I will now focus. To discover the perceptions, views, and actual experiences of cultural stakeholders regarding the efficiency of sustainable cultural policies and their learning needs, we conducted a small but targeted research. We focused on representatives of diverse forms of cultural organizations and associations, as well as on regional development experts, and disseminated an online questionnaire containing both closed and open-ended questions. Presenting our main findings, it seems that the majority of respondents are unhappy with or unaware of the existing policies on cultural sustainability in their countries. The next larger section of respondents took a neutral stance. This could perhaps reveal a lack of knowledge on the topic or even an unwillingness to respond negatively. Very few respondents found the current policies comprehensive. Regarding the cultural involvement of local communities, the majority of respondents believe that people in their local environments are generally culturally aware. However, also here, the second most popular answer is neutral. A positive sign, though, is that none of the respondents believed local people to be culturally totally unaware. Moving on to the question whether local communities have enough opportunities to participate in the administration of their local cultural wealth, opinions differ and are almost equally divided between agreement and disagreement, weighing a bit more heavily towards dissatisfaction. 1/4 of respondents assume a neutral stance. It would thus seem that satisfaction degrees are case and location dependent. Regarding the factors hindering the active participation of local communities in cultural administration, quite interestingly, the majority of respondents mentioned that the centralized cultural policies hinder grassroots bottom-up involvement, signifying that participatory policies may have not taken root yet. Other important barriers are the lack of know-how, supporting once again the necessity for CUBES, the lack of people's interest in cultural affairs, and the lack of leisure time. Respondents also offered some thoughts on how to foster more active involvement of local communities in bottom-up cultural administration. Among their proposals were to offer incentives and motives by promoting successful examples, to decentralize cultural power and administration by working more with community representatives, to reduce bureaucracy, and to establish partnerships with other institutions on shared community actions. The role of specialized education and of cultivating awareness regarding culture's contribution to the quality of everyday life were also underlined. And I now may say that all these findings echo many of the highlights of today's presentations by our panelists. Coming to the hot issue of the adequacy of training that the cultural professionals receive, more than 60% of respondents believe that the training received is unsatisfying. May I remind here that our respondents were actually cultural professionals. Few respondents seem satisfied. However, when participants were asked to name training opportunities on sustainable cultural administration, several of them claimed that they were not aware of such educational opportunities in their countries. And the respondents who provided some examples provided just a few. Thus, the initial basis upon which CUBES was designed, namely the lack of know-how and of relevant training, is here also corroborated. Concerning the easiness to engage in fundraising initiatives and in the use of digital tools, opinions differ. Most respondents are somewhere in the middle, but opinions weigh more towards the difficult side, showing that the newer tools in cultural management are not yet perceived as easy to use. Having said that, the outweighing majority believes that digital tools are very important for culture and local development, showing that respondents accept the inevitability of using digital tools in cultural functions. Here, we can see that the majority of respondents feel quite confident in using digital tools for communication purposes. Still, some respondents observe a neutral stance, while few respondents feel challenged on that front, revealing that the wide use of digital tools is not common ground for every cultural initiative. Indeed, the lack of funds, of suitable staff, and of technical expertise are the main hindering factors in using digital tools. The lack of interest on behalf of the organization's board is also mentioned, revealing that some organizational cultures still lag behind contemporary developments. Nonetheless, hopeful is the fact that 1/3 of respondents claimed facing no difficulties in using digital media, thus corroborating our previous findings. Some conclusions we drew from our limited but focused research is that cultural experts view current policies on sustainable cultural administration as not really comprehensive or strong. The good practices mentioned are but a few, revealing the need both for the development of more such practices and for their wider communication and dissemination as exemplary cases. Along the same lines, the majority of our respondents were somewhat unable to clearly answer whether members of their local communities are culturally aware, indicating perhaps either a reluctance to answer on that or a loose connection and involvement of the respondents' institutions with their local communities. Moreover, cultural practitioners feel that existing training opportunities regarding the sustainable administration of cultural resources are limited, while the bottom-up participation in local cultural administration is not adequately fostered for the reasons we presented earlier. More hopeful is the fact that the majority of responding cultural institutions seem to have embraced digital media and feel confident in their use. Closing some recommendations that our consortium came up with is that cultural institutions need to revise their internal processes so as to motivate and enable the local communities to engage with them and to establish long-term two-way interactions. To this end, administrators should follow community engagement guidelines and consider several precious ideas. Achieving autonomy is another crucial goal, as bureaucracy often appears to hinder the efficient functioning of institutions. In addition, depending on appropriate and specialized staff is absolutely needed in today's cultural institutions. Accordingly, organizations should review their hiring processes and also invest systematically on training and on supporting their existing staff by providing educational opportunities. Of course, as I said before, this research is limited in its scope, but we do believe that an opportunity to expand this research with more organizations and more varied organizations would really give us more insight on this important topic. Closing on our part, we hope that CUBES can offer one such educational opportunity targeting both cultural professionals and everyone else interested in learning, applying sustainable cultural administration practices. And on that note, I would like to pass the floor to Anne to help us discover more about the CUBES educational products. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Can you all see my presentation? Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna share it full screen. Okay, so thank you very much, Maria, for the great overview of the project, of the policy paper, and thank you very much, Joanna, for the great facilitation, to the speaker. Many thanks for the great contribution, really. So it was an extremely interesting discussion, and you actually haven't left me with much to say, other than explain you a bit more in detail what the CUBES project has produced in practice. So Maria actually explained very well about our theoretical basis and how this kind of empowerment of the various sectors of society would further foster this grassroots involvement and ownership of cultural assets, with the long-term goal of actually enabling the administration of cultural heritage within a sustainability framework. But I would like to focus 1 second more on the concept of cultural democracy, because this would help us also understand the platform more in detail. And when we talk about cultural democracy, we think of a set of commitments which are to protect and promote cultural diversity and the right to culture for everyone in the society, to encourage the active participation in the community cultural life, and enabling people to participate in policy decisions that affect the quality of their cultural lives. And finally, to assure fair and equitable access to cultural resources and the support. So if we keep in mind all of these goals, we know that participative government of cultural sector requires a lot of work, actually. I mean, that's the first thing we all would think about. But actually, it's more about involvement and collaboration, as Chiara Dell'Aglio was saying before in her presentation, of different actors such as regional governmental agency, national and local authorities, organization, institution and foundation working with cultures, but also NGO, citizen organization, and committed individuals in the cultural sphere. So according also to the CUBES research and the mapping we have done, there is this equality, we need an equality basis among stakeholders, but often there is a number of barriers that hinders the participation of bottom-up stakeholders in the management of their cultural resources. And one of these barriers is indeed the lack of know-how on the various aspects on sustainable cultural management. When we did our research, indeed, the main focus for the stakeholder that they have found out what is most lacking in terms of knowledge is the coordination and management of cultural events, communication with various audiences, may them be national, international audience, or even at the migrant community levels, the marketing of cultural work, and also digitally, the creation of network with other stakeholders, a volunteer, and the fundings and the grant process when it comes to apply for cultural project and exploiting the various possibility, for instance, the European Union offered, but also the Council of Europe or national fundings. So in this framework, what CUBES is trying to do is that it aspires to address these knowledge gaps through the empowerment of local communities and individuals to own and engage actively with the sustainable management of their heritage. So it wants to provide practical tips on significant theoretical and practical aspects of sustainable cultural management, but at the same time, the project is trying to contribute in promoting also digital technologies as a driver of improvement in training of policies, so as to give really some quality educational material, and not only for the youth, but especially also for adult learners, and so to keep the lifelong learning and the inclusiveness of this course for everyone. And so we wanted this e-learning platform actually to be divided in 4 subjects. The one we have, the one that I've mentioned before, and I will tell you a bit more about the content very briefly, because I don't want to spoil you the whole platform, of course. But when it comes to project management, so this subject will actually provide all the necessary information how to manage projects and apply methods and tools regarding the project lifecycle, with an introduction to cultural project administration using real case studies and exercises as well. So at the end, you are expected to develop and understand the main principle of project management, to learn about the key phases of managing a project, and become familiar with various tools required to engage also with the cultural related projects. The second area or subject is cultural competencies and networking. And here we introduce the concept of cultural competencies as the ability to appreciate, understand, and interact with different cultural and creative resources. It really focuses on valuable skill, I would say, regarding networking for cultural administration and how to apply action to, to enhance the sustainable administration of these resources through the framework of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Subject 3 is about marketing. We're talking about this before as well, marketing of cultural work. And it addresses the key principle and strategy used in marketing in the cultural sector, but also beyond, in the digital world. And it provides helpful information regarding all the tools applied by relevant stakeholders. I would say this is a really useful modules, not only for interested in culture, but more generally, like to deepen the understanding of this topic, which is really high on every organization agenda, no? So, and then finally, subject 4, it provides a great opportunity for both the cultural workers, but also for the community to learn about the strategic planning, fundings, and grant proposal writing. So at the end of this subject, users are supposed to understand the basis of fundraising, familiarize themselves with the concept of fundings and crowdfunding, and develop skill in proposal writing and budget management for cultural administration in particular. Finally, I would like to talk about the methodological approaches guide for educators. This is very complementary to the platform, because is a great tool that educators and teachers can employ when teaching about sustainable cultural administration. And what it contains in practice, it is the formulation of 4 exemplary educational scenarios for stakeholders and trainers. And the goal is to empower at the very practical level the teachers with, first of all, the theoretical framework and contextual knowledge needed for the course. And then it provides also different teaching steps and pathways depending on the needs of the students, of the learners. And finally, it's very useful tool with a lot of extra material and resources that teachers can use to bring real case studies and real examples to make the course, of course, more interactive. So I wanted to conclude with this, and of course the guide can be found on the website along with all other resources. And now, because you will still hear my voice, but now in a video, since we are bored of presentation, I will let you with a video that will explain a bit more in detail how to practically enter the platform, log in, and all of this. And thank you very much in advance. If there are questions, I'm glad to answer them. And I just need the time. I believe. Just a moment. Because you also want to hear the sound, not only see the video. Okay. Birgit, just a moment.
Welcome to CUBES, the platform that provides free access to qualitative digital content produced by renowned cultural and regional organizations and available all over Europe and beyond. The project CUBES, Cultural Administration Boosting with the Engagement of Sustainability for Local Community Skills, is co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. The project is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030 Agenda and the EU's Commission actions to promote the areas of digitalization, online access to cultural material, and digital preservation.
How culture can contribute to solve the climate crisis.
CUBES project addresses one of the core issues posed by contemporary European cultural policies, namely the need to empower and involve different sectors of society in the governance of culture and cultural heritage. Cultural heritage plays a paramount role in creating a peaceful, diverse, democratic and sustainable society. People have the right to be individually and collectively responsible towards cultural heritage, its conservation and sustainable use. This, in turn, requires synergies among public, institutional and private actors. This is why the CUBES online training program is an inclusive, indispensable tool for many different actors, such as national, regional and local governing agencies, cultural organizations, foundations, education institutions, NGOs, businesses and enterprises, citizens associations and individuals. Whether you are an organization seeking to improve your capacity or an individual willing to expand your knowledge as well as develop basic skills and key competencies, CUBES will empower you to own and administer cultural resources in sustainable ways while inspiring and boosting entrepreneurship. Unlike traditional hour-long lectures, our course breaks down complex ideas into short bite texts that are easy to digest. You'll be able to learn at your own pace, work on your own schedule, test your knowledge and reinforce concepts through interactive exercises and further readings. And now, let's take a look at the platform. The CUBES e-learning platform can be accessed through the CUBES official website, cubesproject.eu. When on the website, click on the e-learning tab to enter the platform. After this, click on the registration login section. Before using the platform for the first time, It is essential for you to register yourself in order to have access to all the learning material. Register by clicking on the Click Here button and create an account. Here, enter an easy-to-remember username for you and your email address. Use a safe password, confirm your password, and then click on the Submit button. The system will then guide you to the login option, where you need to put your username or email and your password, and then click the login button to enter the platform. If you want the browser to remember your credentials for future logins, tick the Remember Me box. After clicking on the login button, you will finally arrive to the main page of the platform. When on the platform, you can choose your language of preference by clicking on the Language tab. The CUBES e-learning platform is offered in 6 languages: English, Greek, Lithuanian, Romanian, Portuguese, and Bosnian. Once you have selected the language, you will arrive to the subject section. When entering a subject, the main page will offer you an introduction to its 3 modules. After reading the introduction, you can click on each of the modules to enter its content. When entering the module, you will be seeing the progress bar that indicates the progress you make throughout the course, meaning how much material you will have covered within the module. An introduction of each module will present you the learning objectives. On the right and at the bottom of the page, you will see the navigation bar, which contains the structure of the module with the numbers and the titles of the module and its unit, topics, activities, further readings, and references. The navigation bar is your guidance throughout the module. You can click on whichever unit, topic, or activity and use the material. You can also navigate throughout the 4 subjects. For the best use of the material, however, we recommend following the presented order, as to be able to gain the best outcomes and the most effective preparation. We encourage you to use the further reading section to deepen your knowledge on the topic. As explained above, you can click on the relevant buttons to navigate yourself in the material. Activities are designed to offer an assessment tool to evaluate your knowledge on the specific module after completing it. The activities can have the form of open questions, multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks, or interactive quizzes. The e-course is divided into 4 subjects: project management, cultural competence and networking, marketing cultural work, and fundraising for culture. Congrats! Upon the successful completion of each subject, you will be granted a subject certificate. If you are interested in undertaking all subjects of the curriculum, you will be awarded with a certificate of completion of the Cultural Administration and Sustainability Booster Training Program. In the case you are an educator and you are planning to use the platform as a teaching tool during a course, you will be happy to learn that the platform is complemented by a methodological approaches guide for educators. The aim of this guide is to give guidelines on how to train adults on cultural administration, as well as to support trainers and educators in properly using the curriculum, the digital platforms, and the tool developed during the project. Accordingly, the guide provides educators with a collection of exemplary scenarios in dealing with training of different groups, coming from various contexts and characterized by different level of expertise, motives, and learning styles. You can thus follow the structural framework and guidance steps in order to build the most adapted educational scenario with your own variations and contribute to the initial purpose of CUBES project. So don't miss out and join CUBES now at cubesproject.eu.
Thanks a lot, Anna, and thanks a lot, Maria, for the for these presentations. Eileen, you just asked exactly the question that I was going to ask, so that is awesome. How long will the material, how long will the courses be available online? Anna, do you want to answer?
Yes, well, I can assure that the course will be available for 3 years, because, and after we have to see hopefully the sustainability, the project will allow for it to be longer. And of course, it must be updated accordingly. So I think for the moment, you know, all the learning tools are up to date and can be used for about 3 years.
So during 5 years, it will be available and it will be updated. 3 years. You seem to know 3 girls.
May I jump in here? Panagiotou from CSI, who is the Center of Social Innovation in Cyprus, who was responsible for developing the platform and from the technical aspect, was invited to our workshop yesterday, and she mentioned that CSI will keep the platform going and updated for the next 5 years. So it's a very, very promising that CSI wants to exceed what is foreseen in the project, as Anna correctly said. And so you have time to engage with the platform, but don't leave it till the last minute.
Exactly. No, totally.
A good idea to just jump in and try it out.
I would totally agree. And Cornelia also asked in the chat if it's possible to join more than one courses. Yes, please do all of them. And honestly, I know it's all for free. I went there, and when I saw all the modules, I really had the same conclusion as Anna shared also before. It's really beyond culture. The project management modules and all of them, they are very useful. So I would say this actually blends also very nicely in your presentation, Maria, because you were speaking about incentives for grassroots participation. When you take this course, you get something that is actually interesting for your CV, for your own career. And so it empowers you to participate in this administration of cultural heritage. But by the way, what is this administration of cultural assets? What is it that? Maybe you can clarify what it is, and that helps also to make it less abstract. Maria, do you want to say something?
You open huge topics. I'm glad. Well, I'll put it very simply. As I said in my presentation, well, let's start otherwise. Cultural administration is a large topic, right? So it has to do with policy making. It has to do with having tools to administer cultural resources, be they tangible, intangible, or digital. Be they heritage or cultural production, actual cultural production. So as I said in the presentation, the main contribution of CUBES is that we did not just design this curriculum from our minds or from our imaginations, but we asked specifically cultural professionals to let us know what are their training needs. So we based our curriculum on that. But this doesn't mean that it's just a specialized course for cultural professionals. We piloted the platform that you will be visiting and trying out, 30 pilots each partner, 15 individuals and 15 stakeholders. And we proceeded with corrections as necessary. These stakeholders, some of them were cultural professionals, and some other were just lay people, volunteers, regional authorities, of course, from AER as well, and people who just are cultural lovers, but who are volunteers in cultural associations and have no professional links to cultural management. And the positive and inspiring thing is that for cultural professionals, it was also interesting. So cultural professionals find things that they didn't know about and find the curriculum useful in their everyday professional activities, but it's also not it doesn't exclude people with no knowledge on how to, on tools and basic theoretical knowledge on how to market a cultural event, how to organize it, how to plan it, how to find funds for it. And this, I think, is the great success of CUBES, which of course our audience and our users will be the final judge of it, right? But it's a wide curriculum that can offer important things and insights to people at all stages, as long as they love culture and they want to be part of it. So it was a big answer. Sorry for that.
And very appropriate. Thank you so much. I think these are the final words, actually. It's the CUBES created this platform to help people who were already working with culture. It helps also people who want to work with culture and cultural assets, be they tangible or intangible, but it actually goes much beyond this. And if you take those courses that are for free, available, and you just have to log in and actually to register, I think it's just name and surname and email, right? It's like easy. I mean, I hate registering to a website and having a lot of accounts, but this is feasible even for me. So I think these are our last words. Go to the website, register, and test the online learnings. It's totally worth your time. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much to all the participants as well for the time and attention you dedicated to this webinar. And let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.